All right, so let's go over the times 5 strategy. So if we're doing 5 times 6, we can see here we have 5 and we have it 6 times here. So this could represent 5 times 6 or 6 times 5. When we're doing multiplication, remember we can switch the order. It doesn't matter which number goes first. So for this one, well, for the times 5's trick, it's always easy to think of it as groups of 5 because we're going to try to think of it as tens. So what do I mean there? All right, so for 6 times 5, we have an even number here. So 6 is an even number, and the way we have this set up is that we can see we have 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. So it's even, and we have it set up as 2 columns. So we can see that there's 3 5s, and then there's 3 5s opposite it. So we have a 5 and a 5 next to each other, and if we partner up those 5s, if we take the 2 and we put them together, what do we have now? So now we actually have tens. We have 3 tens. 1, 2, 3. We didn't change the value at all. We still have the same amount there. It's just now instead of 6 5s, what we did is we said, well, I'm going to set up those 5s in 2 columns. Okay, so I set up the 5s in 2 columns, and then I squished them together and I made tens instead. So I had 6 5s. When I set up in 2 columns, I have 3 in each column. So I split that 6 in half, and now I have 3 5s and 3 5s. So there were 6 5s, but when we squish them together, now we have tens. So we have, instead of 6 5s, now we have 3, and we have tens. And what's 3 times 10? 30. So it's easier to think of times 10 than it is usually times 5. Let's try this next one. So for this next one, we have 8 times 5. 8 is an even number, so we set it up as a group of 4 and a group of 4. So what we do here is we think, well, what's half of 8? It's 4. And if I squish those together, so instead of 5s, I'm going to have 10. So I'm going to have 4 tens. So 8 times 5 is the same as 4 times 10. Let's move those over. And when we do that, we can see that if we just move them over now, now instead of 8 5s, now I have 4 tens. So the answer is 40. All right, so for this one, this is a number. This isn't a math fact we usually have to memorize, but we have an even number at 16. So if it's 16, what's half of that? 8. So if I think of 16 5s, if I squish them together, that's going to be the same as 8 tens. So I think half of 16 is 8, and now instead of 5s, I have tens. So 16 times 5, that's the same as 8 times 10, which is going to be 80. If we have 12 times 5, let's try to think this one without the blocks. If we have 12 times 5, what's half of 12? It's 6. So if I set this up as a group of 6 and then another group of 6 and I squish them together, now I have 6 groups of 10. Or I can think, what's half of 12? It's 6. And now instead of 5s, I have tens. So 12 times 5 is the same as 6 times 10, which is 60. All right, so let's try it here. So for these ones, let's just try it without the blocks. So 8 times 5, think what's half of 8, and it's 4. So this is going to be 40. 8 5s is the same as 4 tens. 12 times 5, well, what's half of 12? It's 6. So this is going to be 60. I have a times 5. What's half of 4? It's 2. So this is going to be 20. And for this one, notice I switched the order. It doesn't matter which one comes first. If you're multiplying times 5, just take half of the even number. And this only works when you have evens because then you have each number has a partner. That's why we can take half of it and multiply it by 10. So 5 times 6 is the same as 10 times 3 because half of 6 is 3, so this answer is going to be 30. Half of 14 is 7. This answer is going to be 70. Let's just try a couple more. If we were trying to do like 22 times 5, half of 22 is 11, so this is going to be 110. 18 times 5, half of 18 is 9, this is going to be 90. 16 times 5? Half of 16 is 8. This is going to be 80. What about 48 times 5? Half of 48 is 24. So this is going to be 240. So the trick here is when you're multiplying an even number times 5, cut that even number in half and then multiply it by 10. And it ends up being, cut that even number in half, and when you multiply by 10, you're just adding a 0. We think half of 8 is 4, so it's 40. 12 times 5, half of 12 is 6, so it's 60. 4 times 5, half of 4 is 2, so it's 20. 5 times 6, half of 6 is 3, so it's 30. 14 times 5, half of 14 is 7, so it's 70.